What am I doing in my personal Qigong practice right now? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. Okay, so if you'll recall, if you've been following the vlog channel for a while, you'll know that particularly back when I did the 100 vlogs in 100 days, I made several vlogs where I explained what I was currently doing in my Qigong practice at that time. And I did this, one, because I needed to make a lot of vlogs, 100 vlogs, but also because this is a question I get fairly often, particularly from people as, not when they're just beginners to Qigong, because as you know, they're just beginning, they're only learning a few practices, and that's plenty for them. They're going to do the same thing every day, probably, just those same practices. But once people have been practicing for a while and they've learned a variety of practices, and they like them all, which is great, but they realize, I can't practice all of these every day. There's too many. Or if they were to try to practice them all every day, they'd be doing them in a rush and not really putting themselves in the state to get the most benefit from them. And so they start to wonder, like, oh, when I know all these practices, how do I choose what to do? So I've already made a couple of other vlogs like this, and I'll maybe put links to those below so you can see, examples. Because once you know many different practices, it's likely that what you do will change from time to time. And it might be that it changes day to day, or more commonly, you'll go through phases of focusing on one type of practice for a while, and then you've got what you need out of that. And whether you just, what you need changes, or maybe the season changes, and so it's like, oh, actually, I need something a little bit different. Or there's other reasons why you might choose between different practices. In many ways, I think you can think of different Qigong practices like food. I use this analogy a lot. And there's so many options of different foods you could eat. There's, virtually an infinite choice of food you could potentially eat. And that's the same with Qigong practices. There's so many different Qigong practices, almost infinite, really, that you could choose to do. How do you choose amongst all of them? And sometimes it's hard, actually, choosing what you want to eat. But in many times, it's more simple. It's not that hard. You have a few favorites that you like, and so you eat those a lot, maybe even every day. And then, but from time to time, you go, I feel like doing something different. Or again, the season changes. Like this season, it's more suitable to eat this food. Or sometimes you have some specific needs, so you eat more of something, less of something like that. And so it's the same with our Qigong practices. It's wonderful to have so many options, so many choices. One, just for enjoyment, and two, so that we can get what we need at a given time by choosing different practices. So again, this is just going to be a follow-up, another example of this. Since I made the last one, it was quite some time ago, and what I've been doing in my personal practice has probably changed 3 or 4 or 5 or more times since then. So this is just a little check-in snapshot of what I'm doing right now. First I'll talk about what I'm doing, and then I'll talk a little bit more about where I'm at, because this is specifically where I've been doing my Qigong practice lately as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about why this space, and some things to notice from that. So first, what have I been doing? I'll just group it, it's not going to take too long, into some simple groups rather than each individual practice. So I have been doing a lot of Taiji practice. Now, when I say Taiji, I'm talking about Taiji Qigong, not Taiji Chuan. So I haven't been doing Taiji, the martial art. I've been doing Qigong practices that work with the principles of Taiji, of yin and yang, and developing that polarity and developing dynamic circulation of the energy from that polarity. So that has been the primary, main consistent thing that I've been doing. For myself, I felt a need, or that there's some specific benefit for me to get from that right now. And so that's, consistently, pretty much every practice I've been doing those practices, and in different ways. Sometimes it's been just a couple of practices, a couple of specific movements, and the associated energy work with them that I'm feeling there's some specific benefit for me in those, and I've just been doing those couple. Other times I've been doing a whole set of Taiji Qigong practices that work with the polarity in a variety of different ways. But that's been sort of the main base. And look, and I'll even give you a little bit more insight into why I feel like that's useful for me right now. So I do have some old injuries in my body that I've carried for quite some time, that there's a pattern of between left and right within those. And so I've been focusing on these Taiji Qigong practices as a way to work towards hopefully resolving some of these quite deep-seated injuries that are affecting my left-right balance, left and right being an aspect of polarity in yin and yang. And yeah, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of progress on them, so that's good. And then the other things that I've been doing quite a few dragon-based practices. And so there's a few things that you get from the dragon practices. Well, there's a lot of different dragon-based practices, but these practices in particular, the ones I've been working with, help to harmonize a lot of aspects of the energy, and particularly work with the circulation. And yeah, there's just been some things in there that I've been really enjoying, I've felt is beneficial. Dragon also works often with the fire element quite a lot, but it can work with other elements, water and so on. And the main reason, again, why I've been doing this, it's not been so much about the fire element, it's been more about that harmonization effect. That's why I've been working with those. And then the last thing I've been doing consistently in my practice is a type of circle walking. Now, circle walking is one of the less common types of Qigong practices. Most commonly practiced as part of Baguazhang, which is a martial art, again, similar as Taiji is a martial art that uses many Qigong principles, Taiji Chuan specifically is a martial art. Baguazhang is another martial art that is using many Qigong principles within it. And it more than just Qigong, I'd say there's some quite deep philosophical principles present within many Baguazhang practices. And the circle walking I've been doing, I would actually say is not specifically Baguazhang. I'm not specifically doing a Baguazhang circle walking practice. It was more actually that doing the Taiji practices that I've been focusing on inspired me to do a specific type of circle walking derived from the Taiji practice. And I've been exploring that and experimenting with that and getting some interesting insights from that, which has been really nice as well. So that's been it. Taiji practices have been the base, a really consistent thing, and then also quite a lot of dragon practices and quite a bit of this circle walking as well. And and I would say the practices, well, as I've indicated, they haven't been the same every day either, but it's been these consistent themes. Sometimes it's been more or less of one thing or another, or some different variations, but that's been what I've been doing the last little while. So moving on from that, this space of where I've been practicing. So one thing I'll point out is, so basically there's this concrete platform. I think you get a bit of an idea of it here. It's not all that big, but nice flat concrete platform, and it's right beside a river here. And so part of what inspired me to do the circle walking practice is that I was practicing on this concrete platform, and it's nice and flat and level, and it's a nice open space and really suitable for circle walking. And so as I was doing the Taiji practices, I was like, working with the yin and yang and the circulations in different ways, I was like, you know what would feel good is to do this in a walking pattern, and then specifically circle walking. So that has shaped my practice in a way, doing my practice here. And this is one of the things, we sometimes go to specific environments in order to support our practice, but similarly being in a specific environment can sometimes shape our practice as well. So that's one thing about this. The other thing I thought I would talk about with this area, those of you who've done some of the courses, and particularly the Elemental Alchemy Qigong course, where we focus on Wuji, Taiji, and then Wuxing, the 5 elements. And we look at a whole lot of different aspects of the elements. And one of the things that can be really useful is to consider the elements in your environment, because the energy from your environment supports your practice. And having a balance of the 5 elements is really beneficial for your practice, because you're able to absorb that energy more easily when there's a balance present. And so if we look around where I'm practicing here, hopefully you'll get a good enough view as I look around. So again, we've got this flat platform. The shape of flatness, of squareness, relates to the earth element. So I've got a nice little earth element base to do my Qigong practice on. If we look over here, there's a nice, big, healthy river, nice, healthy flow in it. So some really good, healthy, quite strong water element here. If you look over here, we've got some trees, some of them quite big. And in fact, I'll try not to make you dizzy turning around, but you know, all around the sides of the river, there's all these trees and small bushes and grass and things like that. So we've got plenty of wood element. Pretty good so far. And certainly the water and the wood are very easily identified. The earth, you need to understand a little bit what you're looking for that flatness for the earth, but that's pretty easily identified. So what does that leave us with? Metal and fire. So you'll notice, so I'm down here on this flat platform, a little bit elevated from the river, but also there are these hills rising up in the banks of the rivers. It's quite elevated above it. And so those hills, those high places, relate to the metal element, as does some of the hard rocks and things like that. So we've got some nice metal element present as well. And we're actually right in the middle of the city here. So again, I'll try not to make you dizzy turning around all the time. But well, you can see the big bridge, but there's also buildings over there and there's people walking across the bridges. There's actually a road just up over the other side. So there's cars driving past out of sight, but you can hear them. And some of the other bridges, there's car driving past and so on. So we're surrounded with the buildings and the people and the vehicles and all that sort of thing with quite a bit of fire. So the fire's not like right in our face, but it's all around as well. So there's quite a good amount of fire too. So overall, there's a nice balance of the 5 elements. The strongest ones really being the water, because the river, that's a big feature of this area, strong water here. But a nice balance of the others, the earth, the wood, the metal, the fire as well. So it's been a really beautiful place to be doing my practice lately. All right, hopefully that's helpful for some of you, figuring out your own practice and like, okay, what do I do? How do I choose between my practices? Hopefully that gives you another little bit of insight, and that's useful. See you in another one soon.